Welcome to the Deep Dive Books channel, where we hope you find something valuable every day.
Let's continue our analysis of Corey Keyes' Languishing. This is the third part of our interpretation. One of the key insights from Keyes' book is that illness and health are two different dimensions. Just because someone isn't ill doesn't mean they are healthy. And someone flourishing might still have a mental illness. Treating illness and pursuing health, one negative, the other positive, are not the same thing. This idea is valuable and can be applied to other areas. It helps in dealing with unsolvable problems. Let's first talk about treating illness. To an outsider, if someone has a mental illness, they go to a doctor. Modern medicine, with its research and drugs, might heal the illness. Or at least for some disorders, right? In reality, no mental illness can be truly cured. Psychiatry is still a very immature field. We don't have a single drug for mental disorders that's been developed through understanding the underlying pathology. The usual approach in medicine is to figure out the mechanism of the illness, then create a treatment that addresses it directly. But with mental illness, no such treatment exists, because we don't fully understand the pathology. Every psychiatric drug we use today was discovered by accident. They were originally designed for other purposes, but happened to improve mental conditions. Eventually, they became mental health drugs. Take, for example, the drug iproniazid, initially used to treat tuberculosis. Patients who took it noticed improvements in their mood and energy. It was then repurposed as an antidepressant. But why did it improve mood? Scientists researched and found it affects serotonin levels. Does that mean depression is caused by a serotonin imbalance? No. We still don't know the exact cause of depression, we only know this drug can regulate serotonin, which makes people feel better. In other words, this drug doesn't cure depression. It just alleviates the symptoms. In 2006, Thomas Insel, director of the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health, published a paper stating that no known treatment for mental illness cures the disease. They merely relieve symptoms. Keyes notes that this remains true today. Some drugs don't even relieve symptoms effectively. They just make you numb. For example, if you're deeply sad, and the doctor gives you a drug, you may feel less sad, but how does the drug work? It dulls your emotions. It doesn't just ease sadness. It mutes all feelings. It's like turning down the volume on all emotional expression. It's similar to what Peter Attia mentioned in his book Outlive. All current sleeping pills don't truly help you sleep. They just knock you out. If you have a mental illness, don't worry. Once you're unconscious, the problem seems to go away. That's where we are with mental health treatments today. For about half of all people with mental illnesses, no medication works at all. And for those where medication seems effective, it's often not because the drug itself is powerful. Take depression as an example. In cases where medication does work, 50% of the effect is from the placebo effect, meaning the patient's belief in the drug's efficacy makes it work. In 25% of cases, the patient simply recovers naturally over time. Only in the remaining 25% does the drug actually help alleviate symptoms. Modern medicine has no real solution for mental illness. Meanwhile, the burden of mental illness is growing. If we measure the reduction in quality of life caused by illness in terms of disability-adjusted life years, depression is now more harmful than heart disease or cancer in many countries. A U.S. survey found that 13.2% of adults over 18 had taken antidepressants in the past month. Mental illness is also affecting younger populations. The average age of onset for anxiety disorders is 14, substance abuse and alcoholism begin around age 20, and depression often sets in around 26. Mental illness isn't just incurable. It tends to relapse. Statistics show that those who have experienced depression once have a 50% chance of a second episode in their lifetime. If they have a second episode, the chance of a third rises to 70%. After a third episode, the likelihood of a fourth is 90%. It becomes a shadow that follows you. So, what can we do? If your only focus is on curing the illness, the answer is There is no solution. As we mentioned in the introduction, with the variables you have, nothing works. This brings us to Key's idea. Elevate the dimension. This means raising your perspective, stepping out of the situation, and approaching it from a different angle. For example, imagine a child struggles academically, no matter how much you try to help. It seems like college is out of reach. But if you step outside the academic mindset, you might discover the child has talents in sports or the arts. Perhaps they excel in business. If they thrive in another dimension enough to make a living, poor academic performance no longer matters. Key's greatest discovery is that mental illness and mental health are two separate dimensions. Look at this diagram. The horizontal axis represents mental illness, from severe to none. The vertical axis represents mental health, from flourishing to languishing. A person without mental illness isn't necessarily healthy. They may still be languishing. Likewise, someone with a mental illness can still flourish. The key is that, if someone is flourishing, full of energy and enthusiasm, taking initiative, then even if they have depression, the impact on their life can be minimal. Key's found that such people exist. It's not that they don't experience depression, but the illness doesn't define or overwhelm them. On the other hand, if someone has no mental illness, but is constantly languishing, we can't say they are healthy either. Key states, health is not just the absence of disease, it is the presence of well-being. Think about it. Consider figures like physicist Stephen Hawking or singer Jing Jihua. Their lives were so rich and connected to society that, when we think of them, we often forget they had disabilities. Of course, their disabilities brought them challenges, but these challenges didn't define them. They weren't central to who they were. If you can make another dimension more important, you can make this one less significant. In fact, even in ancient Greece, medicine had two branches. One was pathogenic, which focused on treating illness and solving negative problems. The other was salutogenic, which focused on how to make people stronger, a positive approach. If you are strong enough, some illnesses won't be a problem for you. For instance, if you're in an environment with poor hygiene, you might easily get sick. Something hard to control. But if your immune system is strong, you don't have to worry as much. Modern medicine has done a lot of research on pathogenic problems, but very little on salutogenic issues, which is the opposite of what you find in martial arts stories. Imagine if someone found an effective way to strengthen the body, upgrading your health, so that you don't have to fear illness. That would be great. Key's research on flourishing aims to build a system that makes people mentally strong. If your spirit is flourishing, even though you may encounter bad emotions, or even depression, you can recover more easily and bounce back. The illness might still be there, but it won't affect you as much. Let's look at a few examples we can learn from. In the Telomere Effect, we discussed how mothers who care for chronically ill children experience chronic stress, which shortens the telomeres in their chromosomes, making them age faster and live shorter lives. They can't avoid caring for their children, but does that mean they must sacrifice their own lives? Some mothers handle this stress well. They don't view stress as a threat, but as a challenge. An opportunity to prove themselves and grow. Keyes also mentions mothers who joined support groups and actively engaged with their communities. These mothers felt supported by others, and their telomere levels were higher. This is another form of elevating the dimension. They didn't just focus on caregiving, they enriched their lives in other ways. Take Alzheimer's disease as another example. It can't be cured, and there's a genetic component that can't be fully avoided. Many people experience brain atrophy as they age and become forgetful. There's no solution to that. But we also know that people who are well-educated, mentally active, and continue using their brains in old age may get Alzheimer's, but experience little impact on their daily lives. They pass away shortly after being diagnosed. Are these people shorter-lived? Of course not. In fact, they had Alzheimer's for some time, but because their brains were strong, they suppressed the disease. They managed to extend their healthy years. Then there are those who suffer strokes and become paralyzed on one side of their body. Some of these individuals are so mentally strong that they are determined to recover, even tying up their functional arm to train the paralyzed side. These people often do recover. Did the stroke-affected area of their brain heal? No. Autopsies show that the damaged brain area remained as it was. But these strong-willed individuals created new neural pathways in their brain to regain movement. We can't cure the illness, but by shifting focus to another dimension, we can reduce its impact. If you are strong, you don't have to let being ill define you. There are ways to foster a flourishing mind, but you have to take action. Just like exercising the body. Keys outlines 5 areas to work on. 1. Learn new things. 2. Build warm, trusting relationships. 3. Play. 4. Live a life with meaning and purpose. 5. Cultivate a spiritual life. We'll dive deeper into each of these areas later. Let's think about other ways to apply Key's idea of shifting dimensions to solve problems. There's an old saying in China: problems that arise from development must be solved through further development. This captures the same idea. In the 1990s, many state-owned enterprises in China went through mass layoffs, which created a lot of tension. You could argue endlessly about how to compensate workers or what jobs they could do next, and everyone had valid points. But luckily, the economy was growing rapidly at the time, especially in the South. New job opportunities emerged, and local governments had enough money to buy out years of service. It wasn't necessarily fair, but the problem was managed. It wasn't solved cleverly, but it didn't need to be. You didn't get punished for the imperfection. We've discussed the concept of wicked problems before. Problems with no clear solutions, but because the system evolves, the issue eventually fades away. Take another example from 7 Rules of Power by Jeffrey Pfeffer. The story of a Buddhist master with a face sore that symbolizes past mistakes catching up with him. Yet, if you have greater power, when the time comes, that issue won't be a problem anymore. This may sound like avoidance, but some problems are unsolvable no matter how hard you face them. Shifting to another dimension, where that problem becomes irrelevant, is the best solution when no other options remain. There's a saying: the weak seek revenge, the strong forgive, and the wise ignore. You can ignore a problem because you operate on a different level. That's it for today. In the next part, we'll discuss transforming yourself in adversity.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.